Today I'm going to be talking about one of the single most important things that people get absolutely wrong when they go to sell their business: negotiations. Hey everyone, it's Greg from EF here with another short video for you, talking about something that I see quite common on our marketplace. Now, if you're an entrepreneur who have built a business, is making money, and you're looking to make that exit for whatever reason, which there's tons of legitimate reasons why you might want to sell your business, you might make this mistake too, and it's going to hurt you. And that is when it comes to the actual negotiations of the business you're selling. You approach that negotiations as a showdown instead of what I like to call it as a collaboration. If you are coming into that town, like let's pretend we're in a wild old Western movie here. You're walking to the town with your white cap, and the villain, the buyer, is coming in with the black cap. This is already setting up to be a terrible event for both of you. And if a deal even gets done, you'll feel so embittered about it. Well, like, you get all this life-changing capital and then you just feel horrible, right? Approaching negotiations as this showdown where you feel like you need to get one over the buyer, or vice versa, the buyer feels like they need to get one over you, is often a terrible approach to negotiations in general that will lead to, honestly, you probably making less money on the exit of your business. And now, obviously, you do not want that. So how do we avoid this? How do we avoid this this situation where there's this tension, you know? Well, the easiest ways to do it is what I just mentioned. Approach it like a collaboration. Now, as an entrepreneur, you probably understand the concept of copywriting. It's a very common term in marketing, and that is basically understanding who your customer is so you can create content or write stuff that they would find interesting and ultimately, you know, convert to buy from your business, right? This is what copywriting is. A lot of entrepreneurs, though, when they go to sell their business, they take all these best practices that they've applied to their own business, take it off their head, and throw it into the trash because they're not thinking about what the buyer wants, who is now their number one customer. When you go to sell a business, you should look at selling that business as your new business, right? It's even the smoothest of transactions, it can still feel like a part-time job, especially if you have a bigger business. Like we have a business that is right now looks like it's about to be sold for $24 million, right? To sell that kind of business, that entrepreneur had to put in the work, and you don't want to put in the work without, like doing as much as you can for success, right? So the first thing you look at is, who is the buyer? What do they want? What is their pains? What is their pleasures? What are they trying to get away from and drive towards? What's the transformation that they want to happen? Maybe it's a high income employee at some, Fortune 500 company that's coming in and buying your business for a couple cool $1 million because they want to get out of that corporate environment. That is the pain they are trying to get away from. Okay, now I know this. It may or may not help me in the negotiations, but it can't hurt to know. And it allows you to build a much more sympathetic and empathetic relationship with that buyer, where you're both trying to solve each other's problems. Now, if you're a buyer watching this, the same thing applies, right? Maybe that seller is trying to get out of their own version of their self-created rat race, right? Where they've been scaling their Amazon FBA business to the moon, and it is just such a pain in the butt to have to keep ordering inventory, supply chain issues. Amazon keeps changing their warehouse policies, and they're just done with it, right? So you as a buyer can also do the exact same thing as what I am suggesting here. So that's the first step in negotiating. The second step is understanding what you are worth. If you're a seller, a business seller, it is very common you don't know what you're worth, and that's like, it's not your fault. Like, why would you? You're busy running the business, right? You're not looking at valuations every single day. This is a highlight event. But with that said, if your intention is to actually go and sell the business, it's very important you now understand what you're worth, because this is a common trap that sellers get into where they just sell for way less than what they're worth, to be honest. And it's ironic because usually how it happens is they actually overvalue their business dramatically with what I called, and if you've been watching the channel, you probably have heard me talk about it, what I call emotional equity. And that emotional equity causes them to way overvalue the business. And because they don't want to use a broker like us, because they want to pay a commission, they go privately they get beaten down by buyers who are often much savvier than they are, because buyers tend to be repeat customers versus a seller. It takes them a couple years at least before they sell another business. It takes time to build up that business again, right? So buyers often already have the advantage over you. And if you come in with the emotional equity, they're going to lowball you. And what is going to happen, typically what I see at least on the private market, is you're going to get worn down. You're going to get very frustrated. At first, you're just going to be like, of course not. Of course, I would never accept this offer. And then eventually you're going to get so worn down that you're like, fuck it, take my business. You win. Here's the price, right? That's what's going to happen. That's what I normally see happen. This exasperation settles in, and wears away your motivation to do any real negotiations at all because you didn't know your value. You started way too up top. The buyers probably know your valuation better than you do, but they start way down below because, of course, a buyer would. They want to get a good deal, right? And eventually you just start getting all these buyers giving these lowball offers. You start believing that your business might be worth that much, and you end up selling it. I have seen entrepreneurs lose close to $600,000 on this. I have a friend, he actually lost about $150,000 on this. And this can be the difference between you selling a business for millions or maybe just slightly above $1 million. I've seen all these scenarios and more. Just tie back to the valuation. If you want a quick way to get your valuation and make sure you don't fall for this trap, just go to the link down below in the description. You can get a free valuation there. The next part of negotiation is flexibility. I've already mentioned this a bit when I said negotiations is not a showdown, it's a collaboration. And part of what makes a collaboration successful is that flexibility, right? A very common example I always use, is very easy to understand what I mean by this, is if you're an entrepreneur looking to sell your business, and you want to sell for the absolute most amount of money, then you need to be flexible on terms like stabilization payments, earnouts. And you need to know what these things are as well. What does a stabilization payment for a year actually mean? What are the terms of the earnout? What do I have to do, or what does the business have to do in order for me to get that earnout payment? And also you need to understand, who is your buyer? Can I trust that buyer to actually succeed in giving me the earnout, giving me the stabilization payment and all that kind of stuff? Because if you sell a very complex business to someone who's raised millions of dollars, but they view business as a spreadsheet, they might not be a good operator for you to do this kind of terms with, right? Now, on the flip side, let's say you want to get the absolute most amount of money up front. So in this case, it's less about terms, less about the stabilization payments, all that kind of stuff, and more about the actual sales price. So let's say you had a $3 million business, you might have to be okay with taking $2.5 million, a relatively significant discount on that business, but you get all the cash up front. So in this case, that might make sense. And you got to be flexible on which way you want to go. Does more money now equate into better opportunities down the road? Or does more money overall paid out over a period of time help you to get to your goal faster? Either way, there's probably going to be a blend of both of these elements when you go to sell your business, especially if you're on the bigger side, say like above $2-3 million. That's when, more of these kind of negotiations happen, and all cash deals are mostly unheard of. Could still happen. I have a friend, he had a business with us, a content site that sold for $1 million, all cash up front in 24 hours on a marketplace just recently, which unexpected. I'm not saying that was going to be you, but he had a very high quality business. When I woke up the next day, he sent me a Facebook message saying like, oh, my life has changed. Like, oh, he must have got a really good offer. Turns out his offer is so good, the deal is already done. But what I'm saying here is you need to be flexible. Flexibility is the key to all of your negotiations. Now, you may have an event like my friend where it was a right niche, right size, right buyer at the right time. That is rare. Usually there's going to be a lot more in negotiations involved, a lot more back and forth. And again, this is where sellers can really mess up, because this isn't something they're used to. They're not used to building out their P&L in a presentable way. They're not used to talking to these kind of buyers. They're not as savvy typically in this realm of business, simply because they don't do it very often, right? There's nothing stopping them from, like, stopping you from getting good at it, right? It's not like what we do is this insane magic. It's just that we do it every single day. So we know how to circumvent those challenges and obstacles. So that's the other thing I would say. If all this sounds like an absolute ton of work, just use a broker. It doesn't have to be us, but you should use a broker you trust, someone who has sold businesses like what you have, someone that you feel can have your back and has a track record to do what you want to do, right? Now, of course, you could be, maybe you're a $50 million business and you might be looking at empire flippers like, yo, you guys have never sold a $50 million business. Well, if that's you in the audience, I promise you, we probably could sell your business if it's at 50 million or less. We just sold, like I said, a $24 million business. So we definitely have the buyer network. Obviously, those businesses are more rare on the marketplace. So that is something like, if you are looking at a different broker than us and you haven't seen a lot of businesses in your size, then that broker could still sell your business. But you also are taking a bigger risk because they've never really sold a business your size, and the processes can change as the valuations go up. The other thing you can do, if say you really like the broker and they've never sold a business as big as yours, you can look at to see if they've sold businesses like yours in terms of the business model, right? If you're a Shopify store that is just an absolute beast of a DTC brand, well, maybe they sold smaller DTC brands, and that will be okay. Usually when you do this kind of thing with a broker where you go beyond their threshold, it doesn't mean you're not going to sell. It just means your experience might be a little bit different because they're also learning with you, but you can still absolutely leverage their buyer network, which is absolutely a golden ticket for you as a seller. So negotiation is really about understanding each other and helping each other and using what team you have available to help you do those negotiations. Because again, selling a business is a highlight event for most entrepreneurs. It's something you're probably not really prepared to do in that sense. Like, not saying you can't do it, obviously you definitely can if you want to go by yourself, but you should have a team with you, a lawyer, if you're going private for sure, or a reputable broker on your side that can act as kind of like your ally because they've been in the trenches, so to speak. So if that's you, if you are looking to sell your business and everything I just said sounds really great, but you don't want to do it yourself, click the link down below and you can start selling your business with us today. Till next time, guys, hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment for my ego. Talk to you later. Bye.